Welcome to the Deeper Into Movies podcast. My name is Stephen T. Hanley. I am the founder and lead curator of Deeper Into Movies. We are a pop-up cinema based in London and New York. Today we have two guests, Mickey Down and Konrad K., the creators, exec producers of Industry, a HBO BBC series set in the world of finance. Fantastic show, incredible writing, great cast, incredible music. We get into all of this in the episode. This is a hour-long episode. We go deep and we really get into script writing, developing a show, casting, the music. We talk about Sopranos and Mad Men versus The Wire. This is a great chat. One for the real geek heads out there. And we talk about Wu-Tang. This show's got it all. Here we go. Me and Mickey Down and Konrad K. So I always ask, when did you guys get into movies, and were there specific movies that blew your mind as a teenager, young person, that really launched your passion?
I mean, when does anyone get into movies? I mean, I think the first film I remember watching was I think it was Hellraiser with my dad.
Wow.
Which was obviously not, and he was quite a young father, so he didn't really have a concept of actually what his children should be and should not be allowed to watch. So I think it was that. I think the first film that I actually watched over and over and over again was Austin Powers, International Man and Mystery. I had a video of it, and I honestly watched it, I reckon, maybe 40 times in 2 weeks. I'm word perfect on it, as Konrad can attest. And that was a film that made me think, okay, well, this is, and it was comedy films that really got me into films originally. And like when I was younger, I made loads of bad remakes of spy and comedy films. Like I made a film called Tommy Hilfiger, which was basically a rip. Tommy Hilfiger in Millennium, which was a complete rip-off of Austin Powers, mixed with a bit of Rush Hour. So yeah, those are the films that really, really got me. I mean, when I was younger.
When Hellraiser came out, I watched it because it was filmed near my house. They had the whole creepy house right near to me. And I watched it and I really enjoyed it. And then I met this horror writer who used to be in the industrial scene. And I was like, I loved Hellraiser growing up. And he was like, really? You know, that's a whole... I said, yeah, and the house was nearby. And he said, well, you know the story of a house, right? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, Throb and Gristle, the industrial band, used to have like sadomasochistic sex parties in the house, and like body modification, and like people getting tattoos, people getting piercings. And I was like, oh, that's why there's all the leather and the chains and stuff. It just didn't sink in when I was a 13-year-old child watching it. I just thought it was a really cool horror movie. And then I'm like,
yeah, when I think about it now, it feels like it was a wildly inappropriate film for my dad to show me. I think I was honestly about 10 when we watched that.
Hellraiser and Austin Powers as your origin story is amazing.
Mickey, that thing about Austin Powers, Mickey being word perfect on it, is something I didn't believe. And then we went to, we were in a bar in LA, and it's one of those bars where they project a movie, but they don't have the sound. And so we were having drinks and we were watching the film. And as we were watching the movie, Mickey was in my ear doing the line by line commentary of what was being said, like a sort of like a director's cut thing. It was very, very funny. So yeah, he's definitely word perfect on it.
How about you? What was your movie that?
My first real cinematic memory was Jurassic Park, I think, and it was that image of the T-Rex, the water moving on the dashboard was the one that I really kind of remember very clearly. And then the film the film that I shouldn't have seen before I saw it, if you know what I mean, was probably, in terms of certification, was Die Hard, which I think I saw when I was like 11, is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think I've seen that film more than I've seen the other film, and I think it's I think it's a perfect movie. I think it's got one of the best scripts of all time. It never gets old, perfectly cast, amazingly executed. I absolutely love it.
That was another one that I've actually watched with my dad. It's the first time I ever heard the N word, actually, Die Hard with a Vengeance, which was that was the first one I ever saw as well. So I actually watched them backwards because I never heard of obviously Die Hard with a Vengeance came out when we were like, I don't know, in the mid-90s, and that was the first one. I was like, wow, this is really, really good. And I've always, in some way, for some reason, obviously I love Die Hard and I love Die Hard 2, but like there's something about Die Hard with a Vengeance just because it takes me straight back to like, I don't know, watching films with my dad, maybe. That makes me, I actually prefer it to the first one.
Yeah, no. I do as well. Well, I don't know, I think I would prefer it, but I like the gamification of the plot of it, like the whole the Simon Says stuff of it, the fact that it's such a New York movie. It's so good. It's so good.
It's such a script.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys met at university, is that right?
Yeah.
Were you both on the same course? What were you studying?
I did English Lit and Mick did theology, but we went to a very small, like half college, half kind of Baptist ministry. Like Oxford calls them permanent private halls, and we met there. So it had a very small arts intake and quite a heavy sort of religious intake. But yeah, it was a good place. Slightly weird place to go to college, but we had a good time. And
when did you begin writing together? Was movies always? Were you guys both in finance before?
Yeah, from that was it. I sort of bought when I think about the fact that I was in finance. I was in it for about a year. I actually had a guy, an old intern of mine, come out of the woodwork and say, "Look, I found some of your work." And it felt like, honestly, like he was showing me a different person. But yeah, I was in finance as well. I was in it for about a year. Konrad was in it for about 3.5.
Yeah, we always round that up. I think it was about 3.
Yeah, round it up to a half.
Yeah. It always gets longer whenever we say it, but between us, it was like, yeah, it was probably like 4 years, wasn't it? So.
And what was the journey from uni to finance to script writing together?
So, obviously, we spent a lot of time at uni just watching films together and watching TV. And it was something that, and I knew, this is sort of in a roundabout way, I knew Konrad was a great writer just because I've read his prose before, and I just knew he had a brain for it, and like he was interested in it in a way that I was as well. And then when we, got to the end of our university careers and it looked like we had to get a job, we both sort of, I'd say, I don't know, I'd speak for myself, fell into finance. It was like, wow, everyone is getting jobs. I need to get something that earns money. I'm scared about being an adult. What do I do? Okay, finance. Everyone, this is a sort of viable career option. Wasn't very good at it. Was eyeing the exit pretty soon into it. I actually tried to write, and I thought, okay, well, I'm doing something that I'm so ill-equipped for, and I still don't want to do. How can I pivot to something I actually want to do, and what is that? And at that age, I love films, and I love the idea of writing. I wrote plays when I was younger. I made these little short films that I was talking about. Like, it was all just a bit of a hobby. I've got an immigrant mother. Konrad has too, and the idea of actually turning that into a career doesn't feel like it was a very viable option. But the fact that I was doing banking, I think actually pushed me to try and make a career or even, attempt to make a career out of something that I actually really liked. So I tried to write. Remember Konrad? I tried to write that D.B. Cooper script, that guy.
Yeah.
I was like, and I tried to do that at the same time as being in the bank. And the long hours I had, I was working like 80 to 100 hours a week. So it was impossible to actually do anything. And I thought, okay, well, there's no way you can even have a life, let alone another sort of semi-career on the back of it. So I thought, okay, well, I've got to get out of here. And I left. And then the first thing I had some pretty good advice. The first thing I did was try and get jobs adjacent to TV and film anywhere. And I went to work for a talent agent, quite a notorious talent agent who was massive in the 90s and had a bit of a reputation. And, I had no other experience of what it was like to work in media in any way, and that was a bit of a baptism of fire, but it got me at least near film and TV. And at the same time I was working for him, I made this short film. It was short. It was supposed to be a short film. We actually never finished it. It ended up being like 60 minutes long and a sort of loads of vignettes, and it was about a investment banker who didn't want to be an investment banker. He wanted to be a DJ, and he thought it was really cool. And I played the main character, and I basically roped all my mates into being in it. And I made like a series of little videos based on it, and I put them on the internet. And someone saw them, an agent saw them first, And then someone from NBC saw them and thought, okay, well, this could be a TV show. Obviously, it never happened, but I got an agent off the back of it. Konrad was still in the bank at the time, and I was just trying to convince him to leave. He goes like, Con, look, this is a viable career option for us now. Look, I have an agent. Look, actually, someone actually wants to potentially turn this into something that could, is closer to being on TV or some kind of screen. And then Konrad got fired or made redundant, and it was a really good opportunity. And at that point, I was just leaving the talent agent. I went to work for Sacha Baron Cohen he was a client of the agent, and I went to work for him as he was writing this film, which never saw the light of day. But again, I was like, wow, I could feel myself getting into this world, and like the little bit of success in that short film going to NBC made me think that actually we could do it. So me and Konrad just started writing together loads. Just what the first thing we wrote was this thing called Not an Exit, which was a sort of pretentious version of what Industry became. It was more of a cathartic exercise of me and Konrad writing about our world and banking, and it shared some DNA with Industry, but it wasn't really like Industry at all. And that was just like an experience for me and Konrad to show that we could write together, have fun doing it. We could see each other's talents. I think we could see each other. We pushed each other really well, and it was a laugh. So then, me and Konrad wrote this. We thought, okay, well, some experience, some success in actually making something. And I feel like, actually, I can't remember who gave me this advice, but like it's the advice I give to everyone who tries to get into film or TV. Just like, I know it's writing a script is one thing, but you need to make something that people can see, because just being in my position now and being around executives, like people don't want to read stuff, which is a real, massive, I guess, secret in the industry. Like an industry which is based solely really on scripts as a blueprint, no one actually likes reading. So like actually make something that people can watch is probably better advice. So we made this like micro budget feature film called Gregor, which we funded on Kickstarter. Konrad's got the poster in the back of his office now. And it was just like, we did everything. My now wife produced it. We got our friends to be in it. But it was a professionalized version of what I had done on the short film, and we made it. It got into a film festival. It suddenly felt like it was a real thing, and it got us in the room for loads of things. I got us through the door. And like the UK film industry, the UK TV industry, the system is basically like you go in and you sell loads of ideas, and then you get stuff. Nothing gets away, and like you keep plugging at the door. And then that's basically. That took us to. We sold like, I know, Konrad, jump in. I feel like I've been talking for ages about our biography. Loads and loads and loads of shitty projects. It was a lot of throat clearing for me and Konrad to actually figure out what we wanted to write about and what we thought would be good.
To be honest, we found that UK TV, and it might have changed since then because everything has become slightly more globalized, and because of the streaming model and stuff like that. And everything just feels a little bit smaller and more villagey. But when we were trying to get into it about 6 years ago, the UK TV system felt like a little bit of a closed shop, especially in like half an hour comedy, which is where we started writing initially. And then because streaming was yet to take off, there just weren't that many avenues for us to get people to read our stuff. And, I think when you're a commissioner, there's you're incentivized to basically keep rehiring the people with the older people who've done more material. Like it's less of a risk. So younger writers find it harder, and back then would find it harder and harder to get people to actually engage with their material. And then me and Mickey, I guess because we watched a lot of American TV and a lot of American film, I think our writing has always been quite American inflected, and by that I mean I hate to. The word I sometimes hear people use is muscular, but what I think they mean is it's just kind of quite no holds barred, especially for English writers. Like it's just very full on. We don't really sand any edges down. And therefore it has a kind of maybe a propulsion to it that a lot of American buyers immediately chimed with rather than English people. So like a lot of our early commissions were in the US. We got, our first proper commission really was by a channel called Cinemax, who, great channel, really good executives, made stuff like The Nick and Banshee. And we wrote this kind of highwaywoman Regency costume drama, which was kind of like we pitched it as like Barry Lyndon, Quentin Tarantino does Barry Lyndon with a sort of biracial lead. And then, at the same time, we were developing Industry, and this was about 6 years ago. And then, obviously HBO and Cinemax, and they got to the top of HBO, and they had these two projects, and they were like, well, we'd rather do the one about young bankers. And then we just poured all our efforts into that for 6 years. Writing the pilot took ages. Getting the green light took a long time, as it should, because HBO are very diligent about what they green light, and I think it bears out in the quality of the work they put out. So kind of, I know we've been talking for ages, but that's the sort of story. That's the unabridged story.
No, I always like the origin story of how people got to where they are. That's always what kind of seems to resonate most with our audience when they just hear that it will take 6 to 10 years on average to get something going. Although it does feel overnight when you're like, hey, the show just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, it really does. It does.
Weirdly, Con, I remember like when we started writing together, it's like continually giving each other not ultimatums, but saying like, would you still want to be doing this if we hadn't been have we given nothing away in 10 years? Like if I could tell you tomorrow in 10 years we'll have a show on, I mean, I probably said a show on HBO, which was the North Star for us in a number of ways. I mean, it is for a lot of writers of TV. It was I think it comes back to the fact that there's two of us and we're best friends and we can push each other, because there are obviously moments where we would poured a lot of work into something. Like we were doing a film 4 adaptation of a book, great book, but unadaptable book called Glow. And it's, we put a lot of work into it and then it just died. And like we'd be working on it for a year and then suddenly it's just gone. And I think if it had just been me, I would have thought that would have been really dispiriting. And it would have set me back massively. And if it had been Con, I feel it would have been the same for him. But because it's two of us, we have to say, okay, on to the next thing. And we could almost have we had this sort of shared sense of delusion about the fact that we could be successful in this, and that the fact that we, eventually our I guess like, ability to use a big word would shine through.
What is your writing process as a duo? Is it you sending scripts back and forth, or is it both of you in the same room?
It really depends. I mean, it starts always as both of us in the same room, talking about story, trying to excite each other. I mean, for me, the process really starts when, especially like going season to season on a show, it just starts with an idea. Like you feel quite fatigued coming off one season, and then Mickey will send me a text or an image, even something as simple as an image for a character, and I'm like, oh well, it's bizarre how one image can lead you to a whole sort of story arc where you're like, okay, well maybe we could do 8 hours from just this image, because it tells you where this character is psychologically at this point in time and where he might be able to go. And then it's just me and Mick in a room. We write everything together. We have this phrase which we call driving, where one of us is on the laptop and the other one is walking around. One of us drives, one of us walks. And then what we do, I think the way the scripts get good quite quickly, and maybe why we write quite quickly, is because you've got someone with you. There's a kind of constant process of editorial and self-refinement, and we're not very precious with each other's work. So like we're good at cutting each other. We're good at like tweaking each other's stuff. But it's very collaborative. It's very rarely like I'll go write half a script and then he'll go write half a script and we'll meld it together, because there's something about, I don't know, it doesn't feel in keeping with the way we like to actually enjoy the process, which is half the fun for us is just kind of like shooting the shit, talking for 3 hours, working for 20 minutes, talking for 2 hours, working for half an hour. It's a pretty fluid process. But
I would say, Konrad, you were saying yesterday about like why, because we're writing something in the moment. We wrote it very quickly, and we have become quite quick at writing. And I think it's actually because we've become better writers. We're just better at the craft of it. And as you said, like when we started this, there would be like 3 hours of like fucking about and then 20 minutes of writing. I feel like the 3 hours is now just writing, because I feel
that's true.
This is just a function of spending so much time with each other for the last like 10 years, I guess, like especially in a professional setting. Like we sort of know exactly what the other person's about to say, and like we know whether the person can enjoy it or not. There's no like, oh, is this going to work, or should I say this? Like we just say it. It's become really efficient. There's really no filter in the way that we write. And just jumping on what Konrad said, like I love the process of writing because we get in a room together and we write. I mean, like I wouldn't like to write it so much if it was an insular, isolated thing. Like I like, that's why I like. That's probably why I'm not a novelist, amongst other reasons. I like talent probably as well. But like I like being in a room with people and coming up with ideas and stuff. And that's why I like TV as well, because that is the bread and butter of TV writing.
Part of what Mickey said is really really true over time as well, which is like we're not, maybe early on in our career, there'd be a little bit more, not ego in the relationship, but we'd be a little bit more fragile about each other's opinions of each other. But now, because we've done 2 seasons of this thing, like we trust each other implicitly, like we're very quick at it's always like the best idea wins, and it's not like a competition of who has the best idea. The whole soup is mine and Mickey's thing, and so it's always about how can we get to the best idea quickest, and not like who's going to get their ideas in the show or whose editorial choices are going to be in it. It's always about just making the best thing we can possibly do, and that actually is just that. I find it really gratifying because it's a kind of, in a way, it's a very egoless experience, and it feels very, I don't know, it feels connected and nice. It's a kind of special thing to do with somebody else.
And how did you land on putting an American at the center of the show in a London office?
Oh no, definitely in the script. It was just, this is a pretty rarefied, kind of hard to get your head around world, which feels like a bit of a black box for a lot of people. So it felt like actually having an outsider at the center of it would be useful in terms of the narrative. And also just like, we like telling, outsider trying to be inside stories, like, the grandiose stuff that we always reference is like, Victorian novels and Vanity Fair. And, we love that kind of journey of someone on the cusp of society trying to get in. And it feels like this is a sort of, I guess, contemporary version of that. And then again, it was just like, it's an American British show. We thought like, we love writing American voices. I don't know why, but I think it's because, all the stuff that we spoke about before, the culture we grow up in was so Americanized that it felt like, the writing American voices came very naturally to us. And yeah, I think that was sort of it. I mean, and also it felt again like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we ever, that was ever under question, was it? Like, was that we were going to have an American lead in this?
No, it was always, we always loved the idea of doing something that was set in London that felt multinational and multi-accented. And like, that was the joy about setting something on a trading floor, is like, it's actually a very organic place for loads of people to come together from all walks of life and have loads of different voices in the show. And like the kind of, I don't know, the fact that Harper and Eric are in London together and they're obviously such American characters and so from such a specific area was kind of thrilling and fun to us. And we felt kind of, I don't know, we couldn't think of many analogs of it. So it felt kind of original to us as well, which was nice.
I also quite like the fact that you think she's the audience surrogate, or at least the US audience does, because she's an outsider, she's American accented. And then actually the trick I think the show pulls on you is that like the person you're rooting for, the person you think you should be rooting for, is actually somewhat darker than you are, or at least does things that potentially you would maybe want to do, but because you have a moral compass, don't. So like I like that about it as well. It's not like it's not about, it's Harper is not this sort of wide-eyed ingenue who comes into the world being like, oh shucks, how am I gonna make it? She comes in with a killer mentality and she hides that from the audience for a bit.
Yeah, I like that about your characters. I remember we were talking about a film the other day, and someone was like, I didn't like any of the characters. And I remember I just listened to a Quentin Tarantino's podcast with Roger Avery, and Roger Avery's daughter's on the show, and said none of the characters were likable. And Quentin just shouted like, fuck likable. Are they interesting? Are they interesting? And that's my go-to line now when there's, but that's why like your show is full of complicated characters.
Yeah, I've never understood that sort of likability factor. It feels like when people say that, I think, are you sort of a network executive? Like, where does that come from?
Can I give you some notes? Yeah.
Yeah. Are you expecting these? You're not going to hang out with these people in a bar. You're going to watch them. You're going to be entertained by them. And I think interesting is the key thing. I think if you can understand their motivations, and they're compelling moment to moment. And actually, I think the most important thing, I think, or one of the most important things in TV drama is unpredictability and not being ahead of the story, and characters who constantly surprise you. I don't care about their moral compass as long as I find them engaging. And I mean, the other very important part of that component, of course, is the performance. And Mahala is like a megawatt, radiant, incredibly charismatic actress who can do a million things by doing, by just laying a camera roll on her. She's just a magnificent actress. So you marry those two things together, like who cares about her likability factor? It's totally subordinate to all the other stuff.
What do you think it is in terms of, because I've always, the obvious thing to say is, Tony Soprano, incredibly charismatic, murderer, sociopath, racist, abuser, does the worst things a human can possibly do over the course of those seasons, but you love him and you root for him. And I think it's maybe because that world is so alien to the average audience viewer, the mob, that they they can separate it away and be like, okay, well, that's just, I'm seeing something from over there. I'm watching a TV show. Whereas like, I feel that where obviously the banking world is alien to a lot of people, but like the world of contemporary London, or the contemporary world, and the young people and the way they're behaving feels kind of drawn from reality. And I think it actually makes people feel a bit queasy that there are people like amongst them that are like that.
I think that's true. I think it's true.
Or maybe it is horrible.
No. I think that's true. I think they think of the world as slightly, because the mob is obviously exists, but it feels foreign in a way that the banking sector doesn't, in terms of the way it impinges on people's lives. But I also think the thing with Tony versus someone like Harper, I guess, is that from moment one of the first episode, he's introspective. Like he goes to therapy. He's trying to figure himself out. He has all these existential questions, which actually none of, he's the whole thing about the Sopranos is he's doing all this shit while also being deep in self-analysis about himself. Where I think there, Harper, all of our characters move, actually maybe not so much in season 2, but definitely in season 1, move without even the single beat of self-doubt or of introspection. None of them introspective. And I think that's the thing that people cotton onto him with, is like, oh, he's all of these things, but whether he wants to be better, whether he can choose to be better, is kind of like, he's at least doing the work is so wrong, but like he's kind of set about, he's so far away from doing it, but in a way he's trying to. And I think it is the inciting incident, his introspection. Yeah. And he also is in his 40s, which I feel like people forget about the characters in Industry, that they are in their early 20s. Anyway. He's weirdly, and Gandolfini does this thing where like he's childish, really. He's just a big, he's constantly like going to the fridge and grazing. He's eating ice cream in front of the thing. He's always at the mercy of his most kind of childish primal instincts. He's doing, he wants to argue, he wants to fuck, there's something kind of, I don't know, it's toddlerish. So there's kind of something quite empathetic about that, I think. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, you're right. And he is quite endearing in a weird way.
Yeah.
But I guess and he's got that criminality aspect, which has always been so
sexy.
I don't know. Yeah, like sexy, they say, yeah. Was it saying Goodfellas? Is it Goodfellas or Casino when he said, if you had any balls, you'd be out there robbing for a living?
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I feel about Tony. When I went to New York last time, I took a $100 Uber to Tony Soprano's house just to take a selfie outside, because there was a tour, but the tour bus, because it's a residential area, you can't drive a fucking tour bus of celeb fans down someone's driveway. So I just got the postcode and went to Tony Soprano's house and stood outside for 5 minutes. And then the garage door opened, and this woman drove out, and it's like gold Porsche, Peak, New Jersey. And she rolled down the window, and I said, sorry, sir, I'm just a fan from London. I just want to take a couple of selfies and I'll be gone. And she was like, that's fine, but don't go in the fucking pool. I swear to God, the amount of people I get in robes going in the pool over here is just too much. And I was like, I won't. But
how quickly does that become really annoying? And for how long do you actually like it? I mean, it depends. I mean, if you...
She seemed to just get it. Yeah. And just like, it's cool. I kind of know what I signed up for and it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder did she buy it after the show ended?
Absolutely, yeah. Because it was a family there before, apparently. Because some people have said like the dad used to let people in to take photos in the kitchen, but I didn't go that far. But I did find when I was leaving, I was like, I need to take some sort of memory from here. And weirdly, there was this big rock just next to the tree that looked like a bit of paving from the wall that might have fell off. So I took a rock that I kept.
Is that your moon rock?
But then all the guys in the team kept on sending me memes of the guy in Parasite with his rock with that big stone, and they're like, "This is the New Jersey version of you right now with your lucky rock." Going back, Jay Duplass, incredible casting.
Yeah.
How did he come about?
I mean, he's insane. He's an insanely great actor. He was a quite late addition to the roster because we sort of had different versions of Bloom in terms of age and also just what we wanted from the character. And then quite late in the day, we sent him the script and he read it, and then he sort of binge watched the first season, and then he was on board pretty quickly. I mean, he's a phenomenal. I mean, he's just like, we were always massive fans of Transparent, and we just thought he was amazing in that. And he's always played these kind of affable, and the way he put it was quite interesting. He said he always plays quite feminine characters, or we display classically female traits, whatever that means, empathy and affability. And then, it really clicked for us. Just basically, I mean, his character is obviously very hard to pin down. He's a little bit of an enigma. He has a reputation that precedes him, but also he kind of feels like in the sort of Indian summer of his career. He's post-success. He's all these things. And what he wanted from, like, me and Mickey always like to write the central relationships of the show. We like them to have this kind of ineffable quality where you can't pin down, especially between the older and the younger people, quite what's in it for both of them, and that they're kind of always circling each other and trying to extract maximum value from each other without quite knowing what they want at any point. And like, we always had this inception, this kind of this meet cute, if you want, between the two of them in the bar, which we always kind of imagined as a bit of a lost in translation moment between Harper and Jesse Bloom. And when we saw the rushes from that scene, we were like, oh wow, this is fantastic, because it's exactly what we want. It's so hard to place exactly where they stand, what he wants from her. Like, it's a quasi romance, but it's not a physical one, it's an intellectual one, and all this sort of stuff. And obviously he becomes a more dark character as the season wears on, without giving too much away. But Jay's inherent likability makes you warm to him. So it does that, allows us to do a kind of a bit of a sleight of hand with the viewer, which is really, really good. And, as he's obviously a great comic actor as well. And we started to write into Jesse's sense of mischief and playfulness, which he exhibits in the third episode of the second season, where he's kind of got everyone wrapped around his little finger. And we started to write the dialogue a little bit more for Jay's voice as the season wore on. And I think that, and tried to make him as funny as possible, which was maybe an instinct we wouldn't have hit as hard if we hadn't cast him, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Whose idea was it to have him playing with the Wu-Tang generator?
I think that was Mickey's. Was that yours, man?
That's so good.
Yeah, I'm quite a big Wu-Tang fan. I mean, this is a bit of an anachronism in the show, in that they have like a Wu-Tang poster on the wall. Like,
I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, they're
in Harper's house, right?
They're 22. I mean, maybe Gus might have. He does. I'm just saying, I was a Wu-Tang fan because I have an older brother who was a Wu-Tang fan, and I know he got. I know he hasn't actually watched the episodes yet because they haven't come out in the UK, and he's trying to save himself from them. But I did have to send him the end of episode 7 of Liquid Swords, because he actually, I remember him us sitting in his room like in the dark and listening to that intro from Shogun Assassin, and I didn't have any hair on the back of my neck then, but everything standing up and it feeling, and me having goosebumps, and the idea that we could put that in a TV show 25 years later was kind of thrilling for me and him. But yeah,
I have a teenage trauma of when I watched. Well, I always saw Method Man smoking blunts, and then I watched Kids, where they have literally a YouTube how-to on how to assemble a blunt, and then I assembled a blunt for the first time. And was just pumping Method Man to Cal, thinking I was really about it, and then just had a panic attack and existential crisis for the next 2 hours. But I still love it. 18, 19, 18. Yeah, I was just leaving college, just heavily into indie movies, and yeah, Wu-Tang and Aphex Twin were just for go-to.
Yeah, I actually think I listened to Wu-Tang the first time I smoked weed as well, and I was very young. I mean, obviously way too young. And I smoked it in the house with my parents, which was probably the stupidest thing I could have possibly done. Because I was caught. I vomited and was caught about 5 seconds later. But for like 10 seconds, I thought, wow, this is exactly what it must be like, like to be in Wu-Tang.
Who was your favorite member and solo album?
I honestly, it's changed throughout the years. Like I think when I was younger, it was Ghostface, and now it's and then it was Jizza for years, and now it's probably Raekwon. And I feel like I'm trying to think of the ones I've seen live. I've seen Ghostface live. I've seen Raekwon. Never seen Jizza. Like Jizza did a secret gig I think, when we were at university, like in a really random place, and it was impossible to get in. So I feel that's one of my great regrets. But I love them all.
Yeah, I think Ghostface. Well, Jizza Liquid Swords best album. Ghostface strongest solo career.
Yeah. Or Cuban Links actually. I mean that's actually I was literally actually listening to that yesterday and reminding myself about how good it is.
Isn't it still insane that there was no weak member of a group? There was no Michelle of there's Michelle
ODB?
Destiny's Child. There's no weak members of Wu-Tang. I find.
I won't repeat what I just said because credit to the people who are dead. But
no, but ODB's second album is insane.
Yeah, fine. But if you were to pick, okay, fine. But if you had to pick one weak link, who would it be then?
You God, maybe.
Yeah, maybe You God. I forgot about You God.
But ODB was such a big character and so insane that it kind of made it all okay. Can we talk about Ken Long? He's my favorite member of the show. Is he your favorite person to write for? He has so many killer lines.
He's definitely someone that we didn't write for enough in the first season. Like we had this joke that he just come at the first season. We did this thing which was we were like, we're writing a show about young people. We actually had, I don't think anyone noticed this, but we had a rule where if we could only write scenes if one of our grads was in them. So there are no scenes of Ken by himself. There are no scenes of any of the characters other than the main four by themselves in the first season, which is obviously a rule we broke in season 2, which was helpful. But we had this joke where all he did really was come into scenes, say something, usually steal the scene, and then walk out. And then, when it came out and we'd done all the editing and stuff, and we realized actually how phenomenal Ken was. We knew he was good, but like he just has a commanding presence that we thought is like, Konrad said this before, he's a generational talent, and he's been in so many things, he's popped up in everything, but he's never, I think he's never really been given an opportunity to really show off that talent. So like when we got season 2, we were like, okay, we have to just fucking make him almost a lead. Like his relationship with Harper is one of the most interesting things in the show, one of the best to write for, and we thought, okay, let's just bump him up.
It's insane that he's in our show, really. It's like having given it's in Wales and given the budget and given that me and Mickey had never done anything before and everyone else was new cast. It's like having fucking Zinedine Zidane come and play in your five-a-side team in Vauxhall. Like he's ridiculously good and so charismatic. You can just run. He's the sort of actor you can just run the camera on and he can do pretty much nothing. And I don't mean performance-wise. I mean he barely has to speak, and he has this incredible energy and this charisma, like almost a movie star charisma, I would say. And yeah, we're just very lucky. And like, to me and Mickey, it blows our minds that we get to write him such a great leading role so early in our career. And like, hopefully we'll get to do it again.
How hard is it for the cast to take in all the financial jargon?
I'm super surprised that they can do it, to be honest. I find it really, I mean, I've said this before in interviews, but like, I'm astounded that they make it sound so natural. Because it is really another language. You get those pages. Marisa Abella, who we just throw every single language in Europe at, and she has to learn it phonetically. She obviously is amazing at doing that. But I honestly think like it's similar when you get pages and pages of dialogue about vol swaps and whatever. Like it is a foreign language, and the way that actually there's also a lyricism and almost like rhythm to it, which makes it sound realistic. And actually, it's very important to us that people in that world, as small a part of the audience that they are in the finance world, they hear it and it doesn't ping for them. And that they can, these actors are just incredible at selling it. I don't know how they became so good at it, but they are. I'm sure it's hard for them. I think they've said it's really hard.
Do you have a finance advisor on set? Do you have someone fact checking?
We have a consultant. We have a number of consultants, actually. We have a consultant who helps us with the story, and then we have consultants on set who kind of, either me and Mickey are on set making sure that everything feels correct and the blocking feels right and the intonation. Obviously some of these words, like you see them for the first time, you have no idea how to pronounce them. So there's always someone making sure that nothing really slips through the cracks. Inevitably stuff does, but we're pretty rigorous about all that stuff. And the actors are very conscientious and well prepared. So by the time that they're on set, often a lot of these questions have been asked.
And you have, I think, without doubt, the most explicit show I've ever seen on the BBC. And I really like the portrayal of sex and relationships, that the encounters are sometimes weird, sometimes people are too high to perform, the energy drops out. It's very frank and honest, but can you talk about that? And I was wondering, did this make it a harder sell for the show, that you had that such a hard tone with sex and relationships, nudity, etc.?
I think the sex scenes, in terms of the sellability of the show, is a little bit chicken and egg. It was like, it's not chicken and egg at all. Actually, what am I saying? It's like HBO wanted loads of sex in it. It's we presented a version which had pretty explicit sex scenes and drug scenes in it, and in the scripts, and they were like, okay, well, this feels like, especially in a London setting, this feels like something we haven't seen before. Because obviously, there was Girls, which had explicit sex scenes that were sometimes messy and weren't romantic, and and ended, as you said, like halfway through, or didn't end at all. And it felt like that was a reflection of a lot of sex that young people are having. And in terms of the amount of it, it is very, the sex in the show is a reflection of, I guess, how much sex is important to people of that age, and we didn't want to shy away from it. And all the sex scenes have some sort of power dynamic in them, which I think speaks to character and speaks to the story. And I don't think they're gratuitous. I think they're actually really, really important, not just for the atmosphere of the show, but also for pushing character and story. But yeah, there wasn't really a debate about it, really. The HBO are very, very good with us. Like they focus in on stuff that we already want to do, rather than pushing us in directions that we don't want to go. I am surprised that it's on the BBC, and the BBC have been really good as well, because it is very explicit, especially in season 2. There is stuff in season 2 which I very much doubt has ever been on the BBC before, let alone BBC One. And we've got no notes about them. We got notes about other stuff, but nothing about the sex scenes. If you, I don't know, Konrad, if you've got a different memory of it, but they were always pretty fine with that stuff.
Yeah, they have been. It's primarily an HBO show, which the BBC joined later, in terms of topping up our budget and stuff. So we do have notes from both of them, but the BBC have been very good in allowing the kind of the HBO version of the show to sit on their channels and on iPlayer.
What was your toughest scene to write this season? What was the one that you kept on going back over and over? Was there something that stands out?
Harper and JD, that whole strand in episode 5 in Berlin, the first kitchen scene, and their fight, really. Those were things that we took a while to write, a while to conceive, a while to really drill down on the kind of human psychodrama of it and what their relationship was all about, and really kind of trying to get underneath that. And then, we had to do a lot. The actor had to do a lot, but we as writers had to do a lot in quite a little amount of screen time, especially as pertains to exposition around the family dynamic and the thematic resonance of their relationship in terms of the wider themes of the show. So me and Mickey spent ages on that, a lot of redrafts, a lot of stuff we had to do in post as well, to sort of finesse little bits of it and really make sure that the themes of the scenes were singing. But yeah, those were very, very tough scenes.
How did Nathan come on board to do the score? You have incredible music throughout your 2 seasons. One of the best theme tunes as well. The industry score is fantastic.
He is he's insane. So we have a music supervisor called Ollie White, who's fantastic. I think the best in the business. The fact that we have, because our budget is kind of, it's relatively small in comparison to other HBO shows, we have to work with music maybe that people haven't heard. Like we have a few massive needle drops in season 2, which are great, but like, that they took up a lot of our budget, and we only really got them because the managers of the bands and the artists liked the show. But in season 1, we were working with unknown stuff, and we were trying to find a composer, and you do this, you go through this normal route of going through all these like TV composers, and like, although they were good, it just didn't feel like they were really hitting what we wanted. And so Ollie sent us Blue Spring, which was Nathan's album, and we just like devoured it, loved the title track, obviously, which we turned into the theme tune for Industry. And we had a meeting with him, and he just like, he's obviously insanely intelligent. He's an amazing musician. He's so humble. He had never really written for film before. So like it was a new thing for all of us. And it was kind of, again, speaking to HBO, it was HBO that were like, go for him. Like, just like, a lot of the season 1 was just like, this feels good, let's do it. And like, and it had, it with differing results for differing things. But for the music, it was a real risk, I think, to just put, a composer who had never composed before, really in a TV show, or in an 8-hour TV show. And we kind of all worked together. We sort of learned on the job. I mean, from season 1 to season 2, the music, I think, has improved massively, just because Nathan has got better as a composer, and he's so quick. And like, I think the collaboration between me, Konrad, and Nathan, and Ollie and Dan Elms, who's the other guy in the music team, it became very collaborative. It was like, he would do some sketches, he'd send them to us, we send them back, we say, this works, this doesn't work, let's try it to this kind of picture, let's do this bit more. Sometimes the notes would be like, it needs to hit me harder, or like it needs to be euphoric or whatever. Like I'm sure for a composer, me and Konrad being like, it has to be a banger isn't a great note. But like Nathan as a DJ totally understood what we wanted to do. So yeah, he was just like, that's one of my, on a list of amazing collaborations of this show. I feel like working with Nathan and the music team has just been insanely fun.
Yeah,
like, choosing the music is just like, it's such a satisfying part of the post-production process.
Yeah, it's probably one of the best bits actually of the whole thing, is just because especially it's the kind of the sound mix and the grade and the music, in terms of just scrubbing it up and how much it elevates the raw footage, it gives it another 25% in terms of quality. It's just really, really heartening. And I'm just laughing at sometimes our notes to Nathan are just so diffuse. They're like, yeah, can it just be sick? Is that all right? And he's like, yeah.
We do. Sometimes I think he probably, I mean, he's so nice, he would never say this, but like, we sometimes give insanely prescriptive notes. Like, can that little beat actually be slightly more there? Like, could we like minor this, and like the kind of melody, whatever, like very specific. And then, as Konrad said, sometimes we're like, this needs to be better. Like, can we just hit me harder? It needs to be a better.
Made me feel something in my stomach, and he always delivers.
Yeah, he always does.
What was it like working with Lena Dunham? She directed your pilot for the first season, is that right?
Yeah.
How is it working with her?
It was very fun. I mean, Lena, it was a weird entry point for her, because it was like, she'd only obviously she showrun her 10 years, a show, groundbreaking show, which she was the center of in so many ways. So this was a bit of more of a sort of jobbing director job for her. We had already been greenlit. We were looking for directors. Kathleen McCaffrey, who is one of our executives at HBO, has a long-standing relationship with Lena, was on Girls. And I think Lena just came in for their sort of, not just to catch up, and was like, do you have anything for me? She has a deal with HBO. And they gave her the first, I think it was 4 scripts of Industry at that point. And she read them overnight, and she was like, wow, I really want to do this. And they were like, you want to do this? And it was like, okay, well, yeah. this is a departure for you. And so she came over to Wales, and it was like, it was fun. It was like a mad experience. It was very, I mean, the first time me and Konrad were absolutely enormous fans of Girls and her. So the first time we met her in a hotel in London. It was just like, it was a sort of out of body experience, probably because I was insanely hungover as well, which I'm not sure she knows. But it was mad. It was crazy. And then she did the first episode, and then, she did some cuts of it, and it was a very sort of jobbing director. Just like, jobbing director process. And like any other director, then she went and someone replaced her.
And finally, I wanted to quickly just tell the listeners to go check out your Vice list you created. We've been doing this for 2 years now, and I think you guys may have the best list yet, especially to my personal taste.
That's very kind.
James White is one of the most slept on films ever, which I always recommend. Peep Show is the most depressing comedy I've ever seen. Chicken Corner was right next to where I used to live, which was yeah. And the Blockbuster where
what part of London is that?
That's Northwest London. They used to shoot in Harlesden.
Okay, yeah.
And so the Blockbuster is where my old Blockbuster used to be, where Mark's trying to get himself run over before the wedding, which is really great. And do you guys believe Mad Men is better than The Wire?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Me too.
It's more
Mad Men is honestly like when I watch it, I'm like, this is the best TV show ever. And then I watch The Sopranos, I'm like, actually, I forgot about The Sopranos. But
the conversation for the belt, I think, is between those two and not between Mad Men and The Wire. I love The Wire and I respect it hugely, but it's Mad Men is whenever I go back to it, as Mick says, it's not only how rich it is on every level, it's just wildly entertaining. It's kind of quite, it remembers that it's actually, and Sopranos does this as well. It just remembers that actually part of fun, you have to be silly as well. Like you have to be silly. And like a lot of the gags in Mad Men are kind of
like when the guy gets run over with the lawnmower.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking hilarious.
Just something, like that's a really good example. And just like there's so many lines in The Sopranos which are just like you can tell just the writers making each other laugh. Like whereas The Wire, I don't think David Simon is humorless. I think he's brilliant, but I think it's a slightly harder sell on some level. But that doesn't mean I think The Wire is one of the great masterpieces of TV. But I think Mad Men is in terms of rewatchability at least, it puts it in the ground, I think.
And I've one recommendation to leave you guys on. Have you guys ever seen The Billionaire Boys Club?
No.
With Judd Nelson?
No, what is that?
This is a true story about a group of 80s LA yuppie kids.
Yeah, they just made a terrible. They just I don't want to say terrible. They made a film about it with Kevin Spacey.
That film's ghastly. That's an abomination. This is the OG. This is like I always pitch this as Patrick Bateman's Wonder Years.
Oh wow!
This is Bateman's teen years.
That sounds awesome.
3-part miniseries. Make sure you watch the extended cut.
Where is it available anywhere that's not DVD?
I think it's only on physical. Yeah, Amazon. That's right. He said it. But yeah, I highly recommend it. There's a montage. There's that great 80s montage where they say to the boss, well, if you gotta be going to these meetings, you gotta look the part. And he's like, yeah, what do you mean? And they're like, because you need work. And they just cut to Hard Needle Drop to Pet Shop Boys, Let's Make Lots of Money.
Oh my God.
And they're just going through Rodeo Drive, just going to Armani, just buying 6 suits, and it's all told in stills.
That actually sounds like crack to us.
Yeah, it does.
It's stunning.
I might have to watch it immediately.
Highest recommendation.
Sounds awesome.
I love that. Just because you mentioned Patrick Bateman, you mentioned Roger Avery before, and I know Brett Easton Ellis listens to this podcast, and I'm sure Roger Avery does as well. Can he just do something with Glamorama? Glamorama, we call it.
So I'm friends with Brett, and he's told me Roger owns the script.
Yeah.
He's got the life rights. It's impossible for him to. He has the small budget and the big budget versions of the script.
Yeah.
And it just can't get off the ground. But Brett's new book is out next year, and we do have some big master plan to screen Glitterati, the extended cut of the European Vacation.
Yeah. The Victor Ward bit that was in the Rules of Attraction.
Yeah. So we're going to try and screen that because he is open to screening it in certain situations. So hopefully,
my God. I mean, that's like the
hopefully London and flights and a nice hotel is enough, but that's all we can offer. But we're going to try. And he only has it on his laptop. He hasn't even exported it. He plays it through Final Cut Pro.
You've got to get us to that.
If you speak,
Yes.
if you speak to Brett, tell him to watch Industry.
I think he already does. I think he's mentioned
Really?
your first
No, he
season.
hasn't.
No, he
We're
hasn't.
absolute enormous fans of his, and we're like sort of, I don't know what the equivalent of the
Super fans. We're super
yeah,
fans.
if he's the Dead Sea Scrolls, then I'm a sort of, a Scrollarian or whatever they're called.
Okay, I can message him and see if it's on his radar.
Yeah.
But it should be. It's totally his bag.
Yeah, and like tell him to sort of you can weather season 1 because then season 2 is kind of that's where it all kicks off.
You're being hard on season 1, but okay.
It's recency bias for
recency bias, exactly.
Yeah. When season 3 comes out, we'll be like season 2 was shit as well.
Exactly. It's a healthy approach to stuff, I think.
Okay, this has been so much fun talking to you guys.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much for having us. We really enjoyed it. Cheers, guys.
Thank you. Speak soon. Toodles.
Speak soon.
Boom. There you go. Mickey Down and Konrad K. Industry, streaming now on HBO, streaming now on BBC. I highly recommend it. It's such a good show. And those guys really know their fucking shit. They know like their history of screenwriting, which is why I think they're going to do so well. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you to my new producer. I have a producer on the show now, Flynn Rodham. Thank you so much. You are my Joel Silver. And Telephone Tel Aviv for my beautiful music. Joshua Eustace, you are my Telephone Tel Aviv. There's no greater group than Telephone Tel Aviv in the world of electronic music, so he has no other. And thank you guys for listening. I'll speak soon.